All right. Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. It's 2009. I'm in Los Angeles, and my office is on the east side of downtown Santa Fe between 6th and 7th. The neighborhood is cool. It's a little gritty. It used to be an industrial hub. It's right on the railroad tracks. A lot of large empty factories and buildings in disrepair. But under the surface, there's a bubbling creative energy, and it can be really felt. And over the next 5 years that I'm there, an enormous amount of change happens. It's a bit gradual at first. There's a fancy coffee shop that opens, an organic grocery store. One by one, the liquor stores and cash for gold shops shutter and get replaced by lifestyle boutiques or independent galleries. And art galleries open. Fashion events start to draw on a new type of crowd. The LA Times writes a piece about how the arts district is being overwhelmed by all the public interest in the urban art scene then. From there, it really catches steam. There's a Blue Bottle opens, a Soho House, Stumptown, a Cafe Gratitude. Prices in the area skyrocket, retail developments blossom and thrive, and everything becomes luxury. I go back now and I'm met with this strange feeling that I have a hard time describing. The area's aesthetic is kind of the same as it was, but somehow there's a feeling that the soul has left the body in a way. And it leaves me wondering what happened. Let me back up a bit and I'll tell you that story again. It's the early 2000s. There's a Swedish programmer working alone on a strange little game. There's no levels, no points. It's an open world. Only a few people are really interested, but then slowly a wave starts to form. It catches, not as a product, but as a space. People use this new world to build things, houses, caverns, cities. They share their creations. YouTube starts to explode with Minecraft content. Millions of players, incredible visibility. Microsoft swoops in and buys it for $2.5 billion. Structure starts to take hold. You can buy skins. There's branded expansions, official ways to play. Money flows. Sandbox games become a category, and offshoots like Roblox start to harvest that opportunity. The aesthetic is the same, but the meaning underneath shifts. Okay, I'll do one more speed run. Late 90s, South London, pirate radio, BBC exposure, visibility jumps the Atlantic. Festivals, YouTube, arena rigs, Skrillex in a Kia Soul commercial with rapping hamsters. What are we talking about here? This arc that I'm kind of defining of like something coming out of nothing, catching a big wave, and then hitting this moment of being extracted from. I think that we've all seen it a lot, and I know that's part of what I want to talk about today. I'm John, and thank you for being here with me. I'm the co-founder of a creative studio called Cathedral, and along with my partner, Josh Huberman, we're a little bit obsessed with the way that culture moves throughout the world. And about a year ago at this place, at FWB Fest, we unknowingly set out on a journey, and it's got us thinking about stories like these, all the other ones that you can probably think in your head right now that match that same shape, and what the meaning and forces are underneath them. We met our now friend and collaborator, C.Y. Lee, a year ago, and found so much resonance in the way we all view the way culture and the way that meaning is created. We'll circle back on these stories in a minute, but what I really want to talk about today is this concept of obscurity. And when I say obscurity, what I mean is nothingness, the unknown, the things that we can't see. I want to talk about what kind of value and meaning is in there to be had. The central claim of this talk is that everything valuable, truth, meaning, beauty originates from the single shared source of obscurity. And how we engage with it, individually and collectively, shapes both our interior and our exterior worlds. So that's what I'm going to try and convince you, and we're going to start that journey in the world of math. Math is a low-entropy system of symbols and logic that maps onto a high-entropy system called the real world, such a way that we can perform simulations and create new knowledge and discover truth. We have a set of rules. It allows us to pose questions, and we use logic to then determine the answers. In this way, we can divide everything expressible in math into these two groups, the knowns and the unknowns. And when I think of this world of obscurity, it's really this space right here that I'm talking about, the unknowns. I want to lovingly call it the holy unknown, and I'll leave it to you to decide if that word holy starts with a W or not. But when I look at this dichotomy of knowns and unknowns, it can feel like the wholly unknown is just a temporary condition. We will expand our knowns more and more and sort of take over the unknowns. But at some point in the time horizon of math, we discovered that this indestructible section in the unknowns that we didn't know was there. And these are the unknowables. The idea of something being unknowable is a little weird. It's not that the answer doesn't exist. It's that we can't know it for whatever reason. And it's a little easier by example. About 300 years ago, in the 1700s, there's this mathematician that has an idea that every even number is the sum of two primes. So 6 is 3 plus 3, 8 is 5 plus 3, and so on. This is called Goldbach's conjecture, and to this day, no one has proven it one way or the other. It's one of the oldest unsolved problems in math. If we're starting fresh and kind of naively going at this, I'm not a mathematician, we might just check all the numbers, because how many can there be? We pull an even number, 10, 12, 14, we prove it one way or the other, and we move on. And the moment that we hit one that breaks this rule, we solved it. As we do this, we're expanding that surface of the known area little by little. And the important thing that I want to say about this is that, to me, this simplified problem feels like a very real metaphor for how we create anything in the world. Whether it's at an individual level, like a creative practice, or at the collective level, like a company or like a research lab or something like that, it all kind of looks like this. We stand right at that line, at the edge of the unknown. We stare into the darkness of obscurity. We hold in ourselves a belief that within that darkness is something valuable and worthwhile. And we reach in, and every outcome is possible. It's all on the table. We grab something, we pull it out into the light, and that infinite possibility collapses, and new knowledge is made. And so in this way, creating knowledge takes work. It can be difficult, but using that knowledge is easy. If there comes a day when we ever actually do find the number that breaks Goldbach's conjecture, then 300 years of frustrated mathematicians gets all compacted into one number, and that's pretty cool. That's enough about math. Let's get into poetry. If math reveals truth through structure, poetry reveals meaning through mystery. And let me show you what I mean by that. This right here is one of my favorite poems. I don't know where I came across it, on the internet at some point years ago. I don't know who made it. I've actually tried to Google it. I have no idea. But I just love it. It struck me. It feels like something I'm not able to put into words. And that's kind of the point. If I try to tell you why this poem is meaningful or important, anything that I say is going to break down and not make any sense. I could say it's meaningful because every individual word used in it is meaningful, but obviously that's not true. So I could say the structure is meaningful. It's in all lowercase. It's in these 3, 3, 3s. The pacing has this kind of musicality to it. But obviously none of those things individually. Maybe I would zoom out a little and say it's meaningful because what the author is intending to express is meaningful. But that can't be right, because there's a lot of ways to express whatever's being expressed here, and we would agree that not all of them are as meaningful. So maybe it's in me. Maybe I would turn the camera back on myself and say, it's meaningful because I went through something in my life that made me feel a way, and when I read this poem, I feel a similar way, and that is meaningful. And I think that maybe that feels a little bit closer, but it also can't be true, because if I disappeared, this poem would still exist, and we would all still agree that it has meaning, right? It's not the words, not the form, it's not the author, it's not me, it's all these things layered in this kind of harmonious condition, and that's what I want to call emergent. It will only ever make sense as a whole. You can't break it into parts without undermining it. A lot of beautiful things in life are like this. A lot of things that matter to us most. They carry this intrinsic obscurity about them. To dissect them is to kill them, and so we're left to just experience them as they are. So where poetry is fully emergent, math is the opposite. It's what I want to call reducible. And if we kind of make our way up the chain from reducible to emergent and are trying to hit those points specifically, it might look something like this, where we get from one to the other, as we go from one side to the other, we kind of have increasing obscurity, increasing emergence, and inability to kind of break things down. Over here, everything is exactly the sum of its parts, and over there, it couldn't be more opposite. The meaning is sort of comes in layers and gets created out of the combination of them. There's a lot of different ways you can trace these chains from like reducibility to emergent. Obviously, math doesn't end at poetry. So, alongside math on that end of the spectrum, we might find physics, economics, finance, computer science. Alongside the other side, we might find music, art, film, love, things of great meaning. So while math and its counterparts are systems of objective truth, poetry and its counterparts are systems of subjective meaning. And this idea, this fundamental axis that I'm trying to define here, is at the heart of what I want to establish. These are both systems of value creation, and they both share the same source, the source of obscurity that we pull things from, but they're also inherently different. They require different things. They bear different levels of clarity. They yield different types of value. Where a system of reducibility may give you prediction and control, a system of emergence may give you insight and story. In the 1940s, a writer in Argentina imagined a library with bookshelves that never ended. He imagined that every book in the library would be completely random distribution of all possible letters and punctuation, with no two of them being the same. Since the library is endless, every possible combination of written text would be represented. He wrote a short story called The Library of Babel, where he drops his main character into the middle of this world and kind of lets this horror sink in. At first, the character is overjoyed because everything is in there, he realizes. And so all the knowledge in the world is in the library. Every book that's ever been written, every event of the past, events of the future. There's no problem his character could ever encounter that wouldn't have its solution spelled out in the library. Of course, the challenge is finding it. The library is full of endless nonsense, a wealth of truth and answers, but no way to find it in all the chaos. This is a little bit of Python code that generates the entire Library of Babel as it's described in the book, all of its contents. We can imagine running it on a big smart computer, and it saves each book in a separate text file. And it's weird to think of all the things that would come out of these 12 lines of code, right? In principle, everything that can be written. So the entire Bible, the works of Shakespeare, a whole book of every weird text message I've ever written, a complete transcript of this talk. There's this weird feeling of existential determinism that kind of comes along with this idea. I mean, say what you want about destiny, but yours is in there, in those lines of code somewhere, and mine is too. There will only be one way that I die, not multiple ways. And whatever it is, it's described in great detail in the Library of Babel. And what I love about this idea of the library itself is that it's kind of the mirror image of the unknown of math that I was describing before. As a reducible system, the unknown in math, the wholly unknown, is where truth is revealed. And when we pull from its obscurity, we create new truth. By contrast, the Library of Babel has no useful truth at all. By necessity, there's a lot of truth in there. The correct answer to Goldbach's conjecture, whatever it is in there with its proof, but also an infinite number of incorrect answers with their proofs as well. With no underlying logic or correlation or causality of any kind, there's no truth that we can find, and that's what we might call maximum entropy. The future is in there, but it's unknowable. But what about meaning? What about that indescribable emergent value that we talked about a minute ago? Because isn't my favorite poem in the library? We know that it is. And if I walked in and I discovered it, wouldn't I still be moved by it? Wouldn't it still matter and mean something to me? And so this is the beauty of the subjective emergent. Even in a world that's designed to be completely meaningless, if you are in that world, then it's not meaningless because you are meaningful. You bring the meaning with you. What's important about this is the way that the observer gets pulled into the middle of it. We still don't know where the meaning actually is. It's not just the poem, it's not just the observer, but somehow the observer is essential. They're encoded right into the middle, and there's no way to separate them out. And this is just a fact of how subjective emergence works. Okay, so the reducible truth stemming from the wholly unknown, the emergent meaning, mysteriously in the library, both systems of creation, both sharing the source of obscurity. And what I want to talk about next is the way that we actually engage with those systems. And that's a process that has everything to do with belief. So belief is essential, and to be more specific, it's kind of more like a suspension of disbelief. As we stand at the edge, looking into the darkness, in any absence of light or clarity, we give ourselves permission to imagine, without judgment, what might be. And only then do we take the action of reaching in. And because the source is infinite, so too is the value that we can pull out. And because that suspension of disbelief matters, and it carries power because the act of reaching in comes at a cost. Remember that it takes work to create the knowledge and value, but once it's created, it's easy to use. In your world, you might be harvesting from obscurity by research and experimenting. You might be creating truth in that way. You might be starting a company. You might be creating financial value in that way. You might be writing an album and creating meaning in that way. But this process is the same. You start with the belief, without visibility, that something valuable awaits you. We can sort of see this at the individual level, but where we can really see it is at the collective level. So here's a story arc that you're familiar with. You're a founder, you have an idea you believe in. You have a talented friend who can help. She trusts you, so now new belief is formed in her, your belief becomes hers, she becomes your co-founder. Together you turn your idea into a story and tell it to investors. The story is good, and so now belief is formed again. You perform a ritual where you sign paper exchanging this new belief and the value it might create, but doesn't exist yet, for actual real money. And even though the story is all you have, and even though the magic paper is called a safe agreement and it's extremely hand-wavy and there's almost no numbers in it at all, you suspend your disbelief and you move forward. You take that actual real money along with your very good story, and you use both to get your first employees. And so now they too are a part of the collective belief and therefore a part of the story. I keep going, but the point I'm trying to make is what I'm describing, I kind of view it as a whole group of people building a boat out of the raw material of belief and nothing else, and then setting out to sea into the obscurity to create something new. And what's so great about that is that in these early moments, it doesn't necessarily make rational sense for anyone in that story to really believe that they're going to come back with something. But at the same time, if they don't allow themselves to be completely taken by that belief, then the thing will never exist at all. So there's this very beautiful paradox at the center of that, and it's how we create everything. That belief is what motivates us individually, is what coordinates us collectively, and in the face of obscurity, the belief is what holds the power. If you can see everything clearly in front of you, you don't need to believe anything. So the less you can see, the more power the belief holds. Imagine if the people building that boat could have walked into the Library of Babel and pulled the exact book out that spells out their journey. It would give them the answer, but suddenly the whole journey doesn't need to be made in the first place. The journey is about uncovering, revealing, creating, but what is there to create if the knowledge has already been made? Any step that the group might take would be undermined by the fact that it doesn't need to be taken in the first place. So a world where we already know the unknowable would be complete stasis. It would be heat death, in a way. The fact that we can't know is the very reason the obscurity exists. It's the reason belief is necessary and powerful, and it's the reason we're able to create. So in my mind, belief spreads mimetically through authentic expression. Sometimes that's a bold act of commitment. Other times it's just the way you speak with conviction. It could be show, it could be tell, but it must be authentic. Belief can't spread unless it's seen, felt, and shared. In the founder story, the initial belief is what sparked the co-founder. Her commitment to becoming the co-founder is what spread to the investors. Their financial commitment is what spreads it even more. Each step of the way, commitment is made, belief is spread, and the obscurity decreases. The collective is kind of summoning the entity out of the darkness together, and it's materializing gradually. That holds true all the way until the company IPOs or something, and then the value is very much real. It's real before that, but that's the most extreme example. And again, this example is about entrepreneurship, but the same arc holds true for artistic creation or research or anything else, really. And I know that a minute ago I kind of made fun of the safe agreement, but I just want to stop and make a point of how absolutely essential that object is in the story. There's two things that I think are worth noticing here. First, the safe agreement is giving permission for that belief. It's a structured way for everyone to collectively come together and say, we don't know what this is going to become, but we believe it will be valuable, and we all agree that that possibility is worth the journey. It's not a contract in the traditional sense. It's not backed by rational or reducible justification. If you gave it to a lawyer outside of Silicon Valley, they would have a lot of questions. But inside the system, it's blessed by the power of a mythology. These like ancient demigods of Y Combinator and Airbnb used this very object to forge the entire reality that we now live in, and so that gives us permission to believe in it. The object takes something emergent and obscure, and it packages it just enough to appear quantifiable. It makes the darkness look light, just enough for the belief to be spread, and that's important. The belief that that safe catalyzes, that's the second point I want to make, because once the belief is shared, it creates this kind of bubble of safety, and that's really important. In the bubble, it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to explore. It's okay to invent, to try new things that might not work. Each person involved has committed to the whole. This shared posture between them, the collective act of reaching into the unknown, is what allows the great things to be made. Not because everyone is certain, but because everyone is committed to this unknown. The belief that I hold is that from this perspective, we need more structures that create this kind of space, exactly this kind of space. They don't need to be legal document like a safe. They don't necessarily need to perform the psychological trick that that one is making. They don't need to dress up expression of belief like a transaction. What they need to do is make exploration okay. For better or worse, we operate in a system that places its value on the quantifiable, the things we can see, the unobscure. And that's for very good reason, because risk aversion is a good thing in general. But how do we reconcile it with the fact that we know that all the value and meaning comes out of this place, fundamentally? Okay, I want to return to that original story that I started with in the beginning. This is a visual map that shows the life of any new creation as I see it through this lens of obscurity. It begins completely obscure and over time materializes into clarity and legibility. We start with an obscure and highly emergent environment, a neighborhood in Los Angeles. As a largely forgotten area of the city, there's little that's visible from the outside. In this environment of darkness, a few artists come in with the belief that this place holds value for them. They express that belief through commitments, setting up studios, hosting events. Their belief begins to spread slowly, yielding a system of emergent exchange. A high-end coffee shop takes on that belief and puts down roots. Their commitment and presence improves the neighborhood for the artists, and in exchange, they get the nonlinear return of being associated with the story of those artists and the meaning they create. Obscurity is reduced, the idea becomes more real, belief spreads, the cycle continues. The organic grocery store, the fashion events, these things continue on that cycle, and then a critical tipping point happens. An LA Times article, or maybe it's a wave of Instagram content from all the street art that's in that area. It's a number of things in this particular case, not just one thing, but around this part of the life cycle, the idea usually gains a name. This one already had a name, the Arts District, but now it means something. It doesn't just mean what was there on the map. It means this belief that people are holding when people refer to it. This tipping point on this chart is identified as the line of legibility. And once we cross it, we move into a different phase that I think can be characterized less by creation and more by extraction. The work has been done of defining what could be. We now have what is. So the knowledge is created, and it's ready to be used. And the system kind of takes care of the rest. Legible value invites extraction. And so it is. The real estate capital, the brands, the residents that enter the system at this point are not carrying the belief that the original participants were. Everything's in the light now. They don't need to. So as a result, they engage in a different, more detached way. I want to make a few points here. First, I'm not here to tell you that that cycle that I just described is bad or that it can be changed. What I am here to tell you is this, that if we accept this lens as some kind of reality, we might think differently about how we choose to engage with things. At the individual level of creativity, for example, a musician when starting out may have the dream of becoming successful, and they have an image of what it means to be successful. They can think of many successful artists who are all beyond this line of legibility. So they make work that mimics the work of those artists. They're intending to create something, but they're mistakenly extracting. Those artists have already defined the knowledge of what's working, right? It's already been made. They feel intuitively that the visible version of where the value is where the value is, and they place their energy there. If instead they're able to turn their energy towards the obscurity, the left side of this chart, they might begin the journey of creating something entirely new and creating meaning. The second point I want to make about this is that we create in different ways. The through line of choosing how you engage with obscurity is consistent between them. The example I just gave of the musician is someone putting in their time, their creative talent, maybe their influence to engage with obscurity, to create new things. But that's not the only way. There's a lot of different ways. An investor, for example, has a choice of where to engage on the spectrum. So if we're back in the simple reducibility to emergent, if we're all the way on the left side of this, the fully reducible, we're going to find things that look more like traditional investment, whether that's bonds, lending, index funds, whatever. They're predictable, they're quantifiable, they're effective at extraction, and they're very good at that. That's wonderful if that's what you want to do, right? Somewhere in the middle, we have that sort of angel investment area that we talked about earlier, doing this like a bit of a dance, kind of straddling both worlds. At its core, an angel investment really is an expression of belief. I believe that what you make will matter and have value. In this way, this type of investment is doing a very important thing of protecting that obscure, important space of exploration. The investor becomes one of the key creators in the story, and yes, if there is financial value, depending on how the cap table looks at that time, they will yield financial benefit from it. But more importantly, more meaningfully at least, they're bonded with the origin of the story. If we extend this idea further into our most emergent systems of art and expression, we find ourselves in patronage. In this configuration, the patron is chosen to completely release the tether of capital to quantifiable financial return. This action is a lot like a coffee shop planting itself in the neighborhood. It's a commitment that generates an enormous amount of belief, and it bonds the parties together in the form of the story. And just like in poetry, when we tried to locate the meaning and the value and we found ourselves at the center of it, the same is true here. The further we move to the right along the spectrum, the more entangled that the participants become in the story. True not just for angel investors or patrons, of course, but anyone engaging with their time, their influence, their talent, or anything else. I am absolutely convinced that this force is specifically why systems feel so valuable and high quality before they reach legibility, because everyone that's engaging at that moment is involved. And what's interesting about that is that it forms kind of a system of self-selection. It's a consequence of emerging with emergent and obscure things. Where a reducible system is legible on its own, the emergent system is not legible at all. It has to be navigated from the inside. The way it returns things can't be understood easily from the outside, and so in that way it demands a certain level of attention and care. This has the effect of pushing out those that intend to be extractive and welcoming in those that have the intention of meaningfully co-creating. Okay, back here. As I was working this out, I was talking through this visual with Nick Wands, one of the incredible creatives on the Cathedral team. We were talking about the ways that this applies to all different kinds of things, music, cities, anything else. At some point he said, I just feel like, for my life, all I want to do is put my energy on the left side of that line. And I just feel like that's a great way to express what I'm really trying to get at here. Different mediums, different modes of engagement, different verticals, but this through line of choosing where you place your focus is consistent across them. Yes, you can extract with your capital. You can also create with it. Yes, you can extract with your time, your influence. You can also create with it. That decision has everything to do with obscurity. We all choose where we put our energy. Someone shared a really good quote with me yesterday. We were talking about creative process, and the quote comes from Quincy Jones, legendary music producer. And what he said was, the moment money enters the conversation, God leaves the room. Now, there's things to feel weird about with that, but there's also somehow a really deep resonance there, and I felt like it connects to this idea in a really interesting way. I mean, the questions are, what does he mean by money, and what does he mean by God? I think we often have this way of like villainizing capital or like conflating it for something else. If I were to rephrase Quincy's words, that quote, through this lens of obscurity, I would probably say something that's more like, the moment that you begin to focus on reducible, quantifiable value, you leave the meaning behind. And in so many ways of life, whether it's art, expression, love, purpose, leadership, authentic, emergent meaning is the thing that we're really actually after. I'd encourage you to apply this framework to your own world, however it may make sense for you, And as a group of people that are very much at the forefront of the future, I'd encourage you also to seek ways that we can all build structures to nurture and value the obscure. I want to live in a world where there's absolutely no question about the value that comes from this space, where we can embrace it together and collectively create value in whatever we choose. Here's where to find these slides and a whole bunch of information. If there's a recording to this talk, I'll put it up there as well as more information about myself, Cathedral, House of Paper, the things that we're working on. I also can't express enough how every person on this list was absolutely instrumental in enabling this talk to come to life. Thank you to everyone who inspires the ideas underneath this, and for those of you that listen to me ramble about it. I've given you just one perspective on this concept of obscurity, but throughout the day today and all tomorrow in the library, we are creating an emergent constellation of different perspectives from people a lot smarter than myself. Brett Forrest just gave what I'm sure was an incredible talk about how he and his lab are bringing solutions to plastic waste out of obscurity and into the light. Later on today and again tomorrow, Taylor Vick will be leading us all in an end-of-life ceremony where we'll confront our own death together. You can sign up for that in the library. We hope that collectively we can experience and capture the essence of this very idea, not just through reducible facts and slides and explanation, but through layered, emergent meaning. Thank you.